So in 2015, I was really lucky to have the opportunity to attend Harvard Law School for a week-long intensive executive education program on strategic negotiations. Now, personally, I believe that negotiation is one of life's most important skills. It just unlocks so many opportunities, so much value, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't practice, and it definitely can be learned. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to share with you some of the main principles around negotiation, around deal making, that I learned during that 5-day intensive course at Harvard Law School. And hopefully it'll help you in your life to be able to unlock some value. If you've got a negotiation, and firstly, before we start on that, just remember negotiation exists everywhere. It exists at home, it exists in your family life, it exists in your work life, in your business life. If you're playing sport, negotiation is everywhere. It's so fundamental, so important. So before we kick off, just remember how important these skills are, and here are some of the main principles. So if you are in a negotiation, step number one is you need to know who the key players are. So make a list, jot down whether it's a one-on-one negotiation, if it's a 3, 4, 5-way negotiation, note down the key players and do your research on them. Step number 2, after you know the key players and you've got a basic understanding of who they are, this is a critical step. You need to make sure that you can find out what their motivations are and what their goals are from this deal, from this collaboration, from this partnership. So find out as much as you can about their interests and what's of the highest value to them. Make a list of that. Note down different points and angles, because when you actually get into the game, knowing this will help you to unlock a lot of that value that's probably sitting there that will make the strongest partnerships and negotiations. Step 3, know that when you go into a negotiation, the main priority is not to win. The main priority is to grow the pie and to create as much value as possible. Step 4, know when it's time to walk away. This is referred to as a BATNA, which is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And what that is that's your baseline. So in every negotiation, you need to be very clear when is the time for you to walk away if you can't unlock that value. Anything that's above that walk away line should tell you that the deal is worth pursuing in some way or form. If it goes below that BATNA, your baseline, it's not worth getting involved in the deal, and you're better off walking away, focusing on something else, because it's going to be a waste of time and you're going to end up losing, resenting the other party, and it's just not worth it. So once you figured out what their interests are, once you figured out what value that you need to provide, once you figured out what a couple of your goals of the negotiations are, know where your walk away mark is when you end that negotiation. This is really key as well. Step number 5 is know the zone of possible agreement. So in every negotiation, there is usually a zone of possible agreement. The bigger that this zone is, the better the negotiation is going to be. Now, let me explain this a little bit more. So say, for example, you're buying a car, right? The car that you're looking at is $60,000, but you only have $25,000 to spend. Now, the reality is, even with great negotiation, you won't get that car for $25,000 or $30,000. So your zone of possible agreement is quite small in that circumstance. Now, say for example, if you have $40,000 available in your bank account or in your finances that's available, the car's sitting around $50,000. You have a zone of possible agreement that's going to be much larger. And what this will mean is that you and the dealer that you're working with will have a much stronger negotiation, because they'll be able to meet you at a place that's beneficial for their business, and you'll also be able to be in a comfortable place to afford that vehicle or that product that you're looking at buying. So the bigger the zone of possible agreement, the better it is. If it's not going to match up, there's no point engaging with that negotiation. You see this happen a lot, I guess, in family law and family negotiations, where I guess emotions take a really, they play a huge role in that negotiation. And if the two parties hate each other and they've got such a big divide, that zone of possible agreement becomes so much smaller. Whereas in amicable separations, you will see that the agreement is usually a lot mutual, and both parties will find out, yep, this is high value to me, low value to you. This is high value to you, this is low value to me. Let's keep making concessions that increase the value for the other person that will grow the biggest pie possible. So that's zone of possible agreement. Make it as big as possible. Following up on zone of possible agreement, there's things that you can do to keep improving the zone of possible agreement. That's by bringing in things like a third party, adding additional value, bringing in more features, finding out ways that you can work together to add more value to the other party. That's all that the zone of possible agreement is how much value do we have in our pie? How big can we make the pie to come to a partnership agreement or a collaboration that's going to be a win-win for both of us? That's ZOPA. So another follow-up on the zone of possible agreement, make the pie as big as possible. Now, that just means value. The more value you can add to any collaboration or negotiation, the better the negotiation is going to be. The worst negotiations are win-loss negotiations, where one party wins, one loses, because it just means that there's the opportunity to unlock more value over the longer term is gone, and all the time and effort you've gone at building that relationship is just it's short term and just not worth the short term win. Unless it's a binary negotiation where you're negotiating the price of a cup of coffee, where it's a one-on-one transactional negotiation, I would not be going for a win-loss type of situation. A win-win is always ideal as it unlocks future value. And the final step is knowing how to make concessions. Now, concessions are key in every single negotiation because ultimately both parties want to feel like they win. So always have 3, 4, 5 concessions that are low value to you but high value to the other person that you can add in to make them feel like they have really won out of the deal. Never go out with what your best price, what your baseline is, because there won't be enough room for you to move from that starting position. A lot of people do this. They'll start off with something like, look, I'm just going to cut to the chase. This is my best case scenario. Can you do the deal? Sometimes it works, but very rarely will the other party feel like they win because they're going to think that you've got scope to move when the reality is you've actually thrown out your best possible price, and they can make concessions because they've got a lot more in their arsenal, whereas you've got very little scope to move around. So whatever it is, whether it's a transactional negotiation or a bigger deal, make sure that you do put in some padding so that you can make the other party feel like they are getting a good deal and both parties are winning from that negotiation. So that's a quick overview. Some of the real core fundamentals that I learned from that course in Harvard and that I've learned from negotiating deals along the way. This process works. I've probably been able to negotiate deals to the value of $200 to $300 million using this system, and at the end of the day, it's built some amazing long-term relationships too. So negotiate with the view of creating value, negotiate with the view of creating win-win situations, and negotiate with the view of building long-term relationships. You cannot lose. Transactional negotiations, to me, are nearly pointless. This is the style of negotiation. Everyone should be implementing it. Try it in your life. Show people your value and build upon that. There's negotiation. Go make some deals. Practice this. Would love to hear how you went and what the outcomes were. And remember, trial and error is key. Even if you mess up one of these negotiations, it's not the end of the world. Start small. Practice it. Whether it's at your local store, your food outlet, get comfortable. We're trying to create value and developing collaborations that build the pie.